Hey, hi everyone. Welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. Today I am joined by the incredible author of the Small Spaces series, Katherine Arden. Yay, thank you so much
Hey,
for joining me,
Gavin.
Katherine.
Thank you for
Hey.
having me. I'm so excited to be here. Happy almost Halloween.
Right, happy almost Halloween. Like this was like a really special occasion for me to get Katherine Arden on because Halloween's just around the corner. The Small Spaces
Definitely.
series is like the one of the best spooky middle grade series I've ever read. So I'm
Thank
really
you.
excited to talk about. Like honestly, like it's just like so atmospheric, so brilliant. Characters are amazing. I've fallen head over heels in love with Ollie and the gang. So yeah,
Thank
I'm
you,
just really
Gavin.
excited. Oh, anytime, anytime. So yeah, we are here to celebrate the release of the new book, Dark Waters, which
Yep.
I have. It keeps falling down, so I took the dust jacket off. Um,
Perfect.
yeah. So we are talking about this. We will talk about the series in general, but it will be spoiler free. So if anybody hasn't yet read the series, don't worry. We won't be spoiling anything, but we do want to give you some teasers into hopefully picking the series up if you haven't already. And links
Definitely.
to Dark Waters will be in the
Mhm.
description box so people can buy it. So yeah, everything's there for everyone. And yeah, I'm going to start off with a random icebreaker around with Catherine. These ones are going to be hopefully questions that Catherine's never answered before, and just to like find out, like little tidbits about Catherine that people might not know.
All right, here
So,
we
are,
go.
are you ready?
I'm ready. Always ready.
Okay, I mean they're not bad. They're not bad questions, honestly. But like the first one is, do you have any favorite movies to get you in the Halloween spirit?
Ooh, movies in the Halloween spirit. I mean, Friday the 13th is a classic. I really enjoyed recently the Netflix series The Haunting of Hill House.
Oh yeah,
Um, Fantastic. Nothing to do with the novel whatsoever except for the title. Um, but I think the first 4 episodes of that TV show are fantastic horror, absolutely brilliant. I just started watching the director, Mike Flanagan, his newest, Netflix offering, which is called Midnight Mass.
oh
So enjoying that to get into the Halloween spirit. Yeah, as far as classics, Friday the 13th, I enjoyed the Conjuring series. I enjoy watching horror.
yeah,
Let's see, these are maybe a little bit actually, kids watch so many scary things. I really
you
enjoyed It
do.
a couple of years ago,
Nice.
and would love a rewatch of the first movie of It with the kids. That was great too, so,
Oh, nice. I
yeah.
know, yeah, kids are like, I feel like they have such a tolerance for horror these days
Mhm.
because my nephew, he's 4 years old and he watches like Siren Head on YouTube, and it's a
Wow,
scary siren head creature that just
it's
like
wild.
walks around terrorizing people, and he loves it. He absolutely loves it.
You
I'm
know,
like,
I think
He's four
there's
years
really
old."
there's 2 categories. There's the kids who love all horror, who wanna be scared, who love being scared,
Mhm.
and there's kids who do not wanna be scared, cannot stand being scared. And anything scary is like, "No, never."
Yeah.
Definitely when parents ask me, "Is this book good for my kid?" I'm like, "You have to read it yourself." Kids are so different. Like,
Yeah.
what is one kid's, like, amazing evenings, other kids, like, night of terror. Like, it's just so individual.
Oh,
For
I
kids.
totally agree with that, and I grew up on the Goosebumps books as well, so, like, those
Okay.
were, like, kind of, like, different-ish kind
Yeah.
of, childlike horror, but
Mhm.
yeah, it was an interesting, series. If
Yeah.
you were the hero of a spooky middle grade series, what would you be like?
What would I be like? I would
Yeah.
probably not be the hero. I would be hiding under the covers, waiting it for it to be over. I'm not sure I'm very brave. I feel like writing horror means you're more scared, not less, because, like, you write about things that scare you.
Uh-huh.
So I don't feel like I'd be the hero. I'd be the sidekick, like, "Don't go down there. Don't open that door. Don't get on that boat. Don't go into that cornfield." I'd be that person, so I'd be the drag on the, events of the novel, I think, if it was me.
You would be the comedic sidekick character, I think. You would, like, lighten the mood, be the comic relief, I
If
think.
only I were funny.
Well, I mean, you know what? I feel like some of the humor in the Small Spaces series must come from within, right? Because Ollie can be like very headstrong, but sometimes like she can come out with some corkers. So I feel like some of that must come from you, right?
Every child comes out with corkers occasionally, I certainly have, as an adult, and obviously when you're a grown up, you're like, "Wow, if I was a kid, I wish I was that witty," I wish I was
Yeah,
that brave, and definitely you write a character that's aspirational, like, who can think of clever things faster than you or would go into the cornfield when you're just gonna hide under the covers, like,
yeah.
it's always that when you're writing books.
I can imagine. What's something you love to do outside of writing?
Ooh, I love, to hike, I love to backpack and explore the woods, I like to ski. I live in Vermont, which is, quite the northern part of the US, really close to Canada, and we have, actually no less than 5 different ski areas within half an hour of our house, so a lot of skiing happens in the winter. I have a huge garden, I grow flowers and vegetables, and so I pretty much only garden between, like, May and August.
Yes.
So those are kind of my big hobbies are my garden and the outdoors generally.
It's interesting you mentioned skiing when we have, Dead Voices there. That's kind
Yep.
of similar vibes. That must have been really inspired from your love of skiing.
Yeah, Dead
Maybe a
Voices
bit of The Shining as well.
by The Shining for sure. Dead
Yeah.
Voices, the second book in the series, there's an old ski area near my partner's parents' house, which had closed several years ago. So the lodge, the lifts are all crumbling and it's quite creepy. And people still go there. They go to go uphill, like that little track uphill and then ski down, backcountry. And so you can go and see like those kind of like crumbling infrastructure, and it's quite spooky. And that was definitely inspiration for Dead Voices. Also, there was a big news story in the biggest city in Vermont, Burlington, a couple of years ago about an old orphanage run by the Catholic Church that had a very, very, very sketchy history with like students, orphans disappearing, it's just stories of like abuse many years later, and that was also an inspiration. Just this like extremely checkered, quite creepy orphanage school that was in Burlington, Vermont. So
That does give me some chills. I'm glad I don't live anywhere. I mean, kind of glad I don't live anywhere near something that's like really truly haunted. Apart from my own house, I genuinely think I have a ghost in this house. But I think like for
always
landmarks and
friendly.
things, honestly, I was in the middle of an interview with another author like last month, and I just bought some new fairy lights for the bookshelves. And just
Mhm.
during the interview, they just went off, and like they were brand new. I bought them that day, and they were fully battery charged and everything, and they went dead, and
Angry
they won't
ghost,
work since. It's a
angry ghost,
ghost,
angry
angry
ghost.
ghost.
One of the cool things about Vermont is there's a lot of forest where there used to be farmland because the state was almost entirely cleared in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And now it's forest, but people who had farmsteads would bury their family members on their properties, and so you have random graves in the woods everywhere. So you're just walking around like in the park, in the forest, and you just see like 3 or 4 headstones. Is a very common sight, and definitely that was thing that was inspired that was in small spaces. The main character Ollie finds an old cemetery in the woods, but that's a very common occurrence. There's one near my house which I love to go to because there's a woman in the cemetery named Phoebe Ricker who died in 1908, according to her headstone, at the age of 101, which
Wow.
in 1908 is, like, an astonishing accomplishment, and I have a lot of
Yeah.
admiration for Phoebe Ricker, although everybody else in the graveyard is a child, so it's also a little bit creepy, but
Wow, yeah, there's a huge difference between, 101 years old and then children. That is terrifying. I can understand now why the Small Spaces series is so atmospheric and has all of those creepy vibes. You're surrounded by the creepiness.
Vermont's a very atmospheric state, and honestly, as far as, like, mortality goes, I do think that back in the day, if you survived childhood, you had, like, this, like, healthy outdoor farming lifestyle, people would live quite long if you made it through, like, to 10 or 12,
Oh,
so
interesting. Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, I need to visit Vermont at some point.
great state.
Yeah, I'm excited. Last kind of random question then. You don't have to answer this one. Do you have any embarrassing author moments that you can share? Like, did you ever go to a book signing and there was like something really embarrassing that you did? Did you knock things over?
I once forgot a book signing. That was terrible, and
Oh no.
I felt awful. I felt something less embarrassing than horrifying, but
Yeah.
just there was a scheduling mix-up, and I just just didn't. I'm a little bit scatty. Let's see.
You do so much though, to be fair. You do so much. You write so much too. Like
I mean, I
you
try.
books.
I've been to book signings where, like, there was one person, that's happened before. Although less now. I think it's more of, like, the first year or 2, but it's definitely gotten better. I haven't been to a proper in-person book signing in a year plus because of COVID, but,
Oh yeah.
um, it's a good like, I've misspelled people's names in books. I think
Oh
that's a frequent thing.
yeah.
Um, I've tripped. Normal. Nothing like that stands out as like that was the moment, but always the little things. People are so nice at book signings though, like they're there because they enjoyed your books and they have a lot of indulgence for like your being an idiot. So that's always good.
It keeps the people entertained there as well, I guess. Like,
You
oh,
you
yay,
keep
she's
it
just like us.
if you're not funny, you can just trip, and that's
Yeah.
the entertainment for the day. It's good. It's a good trick to have in your back pocket.
And you say you're not funny, honestly.
Not funny.
Uh, so how did you actually begin your writing journey before, like, what did you do beforehand? And like, did you have any challenges to get to kind of where you are today with your writing?
Writing journey. Let's see. I sort of came to the author thing a little bit by accident, but it was a bit strange. I majored in languages at university. I did French and Russian, and my goal was to be an interpreter. For the UN, that was I had French, Russian, English. It's a good triad of languages, and I wanted to do that. But I went to school in Vermont. I'm from Texas originally, which is a much different kind of state, and I went to school in Vermont. And at the end of it, I decided to take 6 months off before applying for grad school. And so I got a job in the anti-Vermont, Hawaii, working on a farm. 'Cause
Oh,
I wanted to just, like, totally, like, unplug and have this, like, 6 months of just, like it was picking coffee and, like, hanging out on the beach and just, do that for a little while, warm up. Vermont's quite cold. Um, live here now, but I was bored picking coffee, it's not very exciting, and I started writing a novel in a notebook, just like, "Oh, hey, I like fiction. Let's see if I can do it." And my first book was a book for adults. It was called The Bear and the Nightingale,
hey.
um, and it's a retelling of a Russian fairy tale with some historical elements, added in. And I'd always loved books based on fairy tales, and I thought it'd be cool to try to write one, and I spent 2 years in Russia, and I had never seen a book based on a Russian fairy tale, so I was like, "Cool, I'm gonna do that." Um, that's my dog. Always come in.
Animals.
And so I started just, like, by hand. I write my books by hand even now. So I started a notebook, and I just loved the process of writing. I enjoyed just everything about it. I wanted to see where my book was gonna go, and so I took 6 more months, got a job guiding horse tours, still in Hawaii, but a little more stable than the coffee, more exciting. And I kept writing my book. And for a year of it, I was getting stubborn. I was like, "I'm gonna get this published." Um, and I decided to make a real go at it before going to grad school. And so after a year in Hawaii, I got a job teaching English in France, this like sort of teaching assistant program that the French government runs. So I moved to the Alps.
Oh.
That was random. It was sort of assigned, like, by the government. So I ended up in this small town in the Alps, called Briançon, and I stayed there for a year in this boarding school teaching English, skiing, and and after that went back to Hawaii, got a slightly better job, working at a real estate office. Still hadn't published my book, was like, "This is not gonna work." I mean, the book was done, but I had no sort of prospects for getting it out there, so I was like, "I'm gonna self-publish and go to grad school, move on with my life." Um but right as I decided that and settled in to, like, work in real estate for a year to earn some money, I sold my first novel to a publisher. Um, and it was a deal for 3 books, a whole series, and so I was like, "Well," putting off grad school. So I, spent another year in Hawaii working on my 2nd novel and then, quit my job and went traveling, for 8 months,
Oh,
wrote most
that's
of
a
my
nice long
2nd book
time.
on the road, sort of just, like, couch surfing and bouncing around, and then ended up back in Vermont where I had friends from college and, ended up settling here, um, bought a house 2 years ago. So that was kind of the journey, and I finished my first 2 adult books, had the idea for Small Spaces, my first children's book, wrote it, ended up really enjoying writing kids' books, decided to keep going with the middle grade horror. Now I guess I'm 6 books in now, so I'm probably not gonna go and be an interpreter anymore, but I do love being an author. So
Well, I feel like the author life was made for you. It sounds like you did so much, and so much of it what did sound a little bit like random, but like it
it's
pieces
very
together
random.
to get you to this point.
It did piece
But
together.
yeah, you did mention about, Bear and the Nightingale. Love that series so, so much. And I've got them all over there. But
Yeah.
yeah, you wrote adult first and then went into middle grade. So was that like really like daunting for you? Like how did you switch like over? And I guess more people know you from adult first.
So as far as adult versus middle grade, I love changing voice. And I read a lot of middle grade as a middle schooler, and I sort of felt like that voice was natural to channel because I had, read so much in a very, very formative age. So there was that, and I don't know, my adult books are quite research heavy. They have like a historical element, or the ones that I've written so far have, and it was nice writing a book that wasn't researchy. It was like I live in Vermont, it's set in Vermont, set in the modern day. Um, so it's quite sort of more straightforward to write in some ways, than a book with research, and that was enjoyable. And I love writing for children, for kids. I think they have a wonderfully open, wonderfully sincere relationship with books and books they like. And especially with horror, it's fun trying to create an atmosphere that is spooky and scary, but isn't like gory or dark or wrong for the age group. And I love that challenge of like voice and atmosphere. So I love writing for middle grade. And I love writing horror. I would love to do a fantasy at some point, for the same age group, so that would be great, but right now I'm happily trying to figure out different ways to scare scare the
Yeah.
young, so
I was gonna say, are we getting an exclusive right now? Is Katherine Arden releasing a fantasy middle grade?
no. No, it's a pipe dream, it's a pipe dream. I have a fourth Small Spaces book definitely coming out next year, and then hopefully another standalone horror after that, but we'll see.
Oh my god, awesome. I was gonna say, because you can't after the cliffhanger of Dark
Oh,
Waters, like,
there's
honestly, you cannot
more.
leave it there. Oh my
It's
gosh.
seasonal, it's 4 seasons, right? So it's fall is
Yeah,
Small
true.
Spaces, and winter is Dead Voices, and spring is Dark Waters, and then summer is the 4th book.
I love that because, okay, right, this is a bit random, but I love Frozen, you know, the Disney movies, and, like,
Oh, yeah.
those films are, like, in different seasons too, like, Frozen Fever
Mhm,
was spring and winter and some
mhm.
yeah, and that's kind of what I'm relating it to, I guess.
I
So
love seasonal vibes, especially in a place like Vermont where it has 4
mhm,
distinct seasons.
yeah,
And everyone was like, "Spring's not scary," and I'm like, "Spring in Vermont is the scariest season. It's the worst season because it's like the mud season."
mhm.
So, like, I live on a dirt road, for example. We get frost heaves, these giant mounds in the road. They're the size of whales. Like, getting up our road in spring is a exercise in courage and daring.
Oh my gosh, sounds
Um,
dangerous. Spring
it's
is more dangerous than winter,
It's a
apparently.
thing. Oh, absolutely, like, I remember I was getting a delivery of, like, a bench, and the guy called me, the guy delivering the bench called me, he was like, "Okay, alright, anything I need to know about your road?" And I'm like, "Yes, take notes. 2 big frost heaves, first one, go left, take to the side of the left, it looks like it's bad, but it's not as bad as the right. Next," like, this is specific, like, road data, and he's, like, just scribbling in the background, like, "Got it," and he got up here, so that was good, but it was
Uh,
very intense.
it
Um
sounds it's worth the trip. It's worth the
Like,
trip.
come in October if you go to Vermont. If October is I mean, fall in New England, right? Like, the leaves and the pumpkins, like, that's the season. Summer is
Gosh.
nice too if you ski, winter's great. Just spring is like,
Yeah.
muddy, cold,
Fair, fair, but
bare.
oh my god, it sounds incredible though.
Yeah.
With small spaces then, can you let anyone who hasn't read the series yet know like what the series is about? What was the first book about? Like what can people expect from the small spaces series?
Yeah, absolutely. So Small Spaces is a series of 4 novels, 3 are out, set in Vermont in the present day. The main character is a girl called Ollie, Olivia Adler, nicknamed Ollie, who in the first novel has a run-in with a supernatural character called the Smiling Man, who does various dastardly and scary things, over the course of the series, and Ollie and her 2 best friends, a girl named Coco Zentner and a boy named Brian Battersby, have to sort of foil his plot slash keep themselves safe from this character, and each book is based in a season, so Small Spaces is set in the fall in Vermont, um, the next book, Dead Voices, is set in the winter in Vermont, and then the 3rd book, Dark Water, is set in the spring, and then, the 4th book is set in the summer, and it's called Empty Smiles, so
Is that what it's called? Oh my gosh, I love that name. I can't wait. I
so
literally cannot wait. It's gonna be incredible.
it's been
Um,
fun.
I can imagine, especially with it being a series that I guess now with it being 4 books, it's, like, technically longer than The Bear and the Nightingale, and, like, I mean, even though Bear and the Nightingale has more words and it's, like, a
Yeah.
bigger series, but, like, this one's probably you
Mhm.
spent a little bit more time with.
I spent more time yes, although Bear was funny because I started it in the summer of 2011,
That long ago,
and
really?
right after college, it was 2011, and let's see, I sold it in the fall of 2014, but then the book was delayed multiple times, and so it didn't come out until January of 17.
Right,
So I had spent a lot of time with the novel before it came out,
right.
in part because the book was slow to come out, it had those extra kind of, like, years built in pre-publication, whereas, like, Small Spaces was finished oh, man, it was finished in, like, October of 1 year, and they were like, "Get it out by the next year," and so they just pushed it quickly out the door, which is
Oh,
great, I loved it,
yeah.
it was fun to have a quick publication, so yeah, that's that's the reason. So Bear was 10 years, like, that series is called the Winter Night
Wow,
series, my first series. I spent 10 years with it between, like, starting in 2011, and then the last book came out in 19, and then the paperback of that book came out in 20, so
right. Oh
years.
my gosh, happy 10-year anniversary to Bear and the
Oh,
Nightingale
I
then.
know.
Oh, I love
I know, right?
that.
So
Um,
long.
So I guess you are surrounded by so many inspirations being in Vermont. I guess maybe all of that kind of being surrounded by like all the spookiness and things is what helped inspire small spaces in general. Like, where did the seed of the idea spring from?
I mean, I've always loved middle grade horror. I read uh, a lot of Goosebumps, R.L. Stine, and a lot of, Mary Downing Hahn also when I was younger. She's a wonderful writer. She wrote a ghost story called Wait Till Helen Comes, which was absolutely terrifying. Um,
That's a terrifying title. I've not heard of it, but that is a terrifying
it's
title.
a wonderful ghost story. The ghost is named Helen.
Oh,
Um, and I always liked I like the idea of horror. I enjoy watching horror movies. I was on a bus from Burlington, Vermont to Boston, Massachusetts a couple of years ago, and, it's one of those, like it was a private bus company called Megabus, super cheap. I was really broke, back in the day, and I paid extra to get, like, the front seat in the bus so I could see out in the open road, like, this, like, 8-hour drive.
oh,
There was a really thick fog on the road, incredibly thick fog on the road, so I couldn't see anything, so I was kinda bummed about the fog, but as I'm sitting there looking at nothing, just, like, blank white wall, I'm like, "Wow, what if this bus broke down?
oh,
What if we were just stuck in this fog and couldn't see anything? What if something, like, came onto the bus in the fog and grabbed us?"
oh my
Um,
God.
I was like, "Well, what if?" And then it was fall at home at the time, and I was living in Brandon, Vermont, different town than I am now, but Brandon in the fall likes to decorate their town square with scarecrows. They everyone does one, they do some of them are quite creepy, they have, like, pumpkin heads or sack heads, and they have, like one person did, like, garden rakes for hands, which I think is like, mm. They wear secondhand clothes and, like, jewelry and have, like, little scarecrow families, and it just feels excessive, especially, like, right at dusk when it's like, "Oh, did it move? I think it might have moved. I think it moved." Um,
Terrifying.
right? And so I was like, "Oh, scarecrows, interesting." It's like clowns, but vegetable clowns.
Yeah, and
They're
clowns are scary in themselves as well, to be
yeah,
fair.
and so, that was one of the 2 kind of seed ideas, this Mist and the Scarecrows. The first scene I wrote in the series was the scene midway through Small Spaces when the bus breaks down, um,
Right.
which became the central sort of middle scene of the book, but it was the first scene I wrote. So the book was written sort of almost from the inside out. I wrote that scene, I wrote from there to the end in kind of a quick way, and then filled in the backstory last.
Wow, so it really was like plot first, and then I guess everything else kind of
Mhm.
like followed. So like with character wise, like say Ollie, she came a little bit later. Like you didn't start with her, you started with the story.
So,
That's
I find when I'm writing that characters follow their plots, and I
Mhm.
often develop a character based on what their plot needs from them.
Mhm.
In the case of Ollie, like, the biggest sort of impetus for her development was the fact that in that first scene, I needed this kid to decide to get up off her school bus and go into the woods, which is actually quite a big deal if you're 12, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a I would not have left my school bus at 12. And most people wouldn't. So a big part of that scene was finding out ways to make it seem convincing that this girl would decide, like, "I'm just gonna up and take off into the woods," which is what sort of pushes the second half of the book forward. Um, and so I knew I needed a character who was stubborn, who was independent, who was kind of a free thinker, who was not too bowed to peer pressure.
Mhm.
And I also knew I needed to have her sort of see things that her classmates didn't. So she gets these sort of warnings through the first half of the book that get you to a place where you start thinking like, oh, Ollie would have left the bus. Like that makes sense for that character. And so that's how she grew. And then Coco, the other sort of main female lead, grew as an opposition to Ollie. Um, Sort of Ollie's in this sort of dark place because of a tragedy, and Coco is also struggling because she's a new girl in town, but Ollie sort of in reaction to her sadness has cut herself off from people and from emotions, and Coco hasn't. And they're sort of they function in opposition to each other a little bit.
I
Um,
love the fact that the emotion is like such a driving force in the book, and the fact that it doesn't show like weakness. It's just, I think there was a moment about how it was Ollie. It wasn't that she didn't feel, um, and it's just like yeah, like crying wasn't weakness.
mhm,
I think that was towards the end of the first book, I think, and Coco was like kind of showing her like it's okay to be sad and upset because Ollie hadn't confronted a lot of things that had happened
yeah,
in her life,
mhm.
and she had a lot to go through. And I feel like yeah, they and Brian as well. I think he had a little bit of a different kind of introduction, but they all three of the characters were like really important to each other to not just continue the plot, but also to make them feel more real as characters.
I mean, I definitely wanted 3 people who felt realistic in the sense, and sort of a shortcut to realism is finding characters who have oppositional traits, right? So
Yeah.
Coco, for example, is very sensitive, cries all the time, can be annoying, like, she can definitely be that person who squeaks kind of behind you as you're walking along, but she's also, like, incredibly brave, she's very athletic,
Mhm,
actually, which you don't suspect
mhm,
early on, and in some ways, her being very emotional is brave, right? Because she's willing to show how she feels, she's willing to cry, be angry, be sad, which is brave, you know, especially when you're trying to like be cool and fit in. Like she's like, no, I'm sad, I'm gonna cry. Um, and with Brian, I wanted like a sort of a jock kind of character, like an athletic character, but I wanted him to be a reader, like be somebody who was good at hockey and loved to read. I felt like it's so easy to put people in boxes, and I wanted my characters to have like traits that sort of defied the box.
yeah.
A little bit, and, like, Ollie is good at math, like, it's her best thing is, like, science and math, and again, like, you know, I was not a science and math girl, but I had a lot of friends who were, and I think it's very cool, um, to just be a STEM girl, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess, like, do you have more fun like writing them or the villain? Like, with this smiling man, like, did he come to you in a nightmare? Like,
I love
he
writing
is like,
villains.
yeah, I feel like they're probably more fun, and you can kind of explore more, I don't know, like themes and things through the villains, and the reaction that they get from the main characters is always like really interesting to see. And yeah, I think yeah, the smiling man, just a perfect villain.
I mean, I like antagonists as a rule, I feel like when writing them, it's important to have have them be human in some way, like, often it's either with, like, a sense of humor or, like, relatable longings or whatever it is. I do feel like best villains have something where you're like, "Oh, that's a person," not just, like, evil McEvil face, um, kind of thing, and in the Smiling Man's case, like, um, he does have a sense of humor, he can be charming, and I think sort of even the name of him, you think like, "Oh, smiling man, evil smile, like creepy grin," but actually, no, he can be quite charming too, and the smile is appealing. Um, so I don't
And
know.
he's very clever. I love how because he is very clever, but I feel like he forces the main characters to
Mhm.
also think of ways to be kind of outsmart him. And he's like
Mhm.
not just like there to scare the characters, he's there to like play the game and like kind of make them say things like differently. And yeah, I found that really, really interesting. So like with the horror aspect of just the series in general, I guess like and you mentioned this before, like obviously the middle grade horror isn't too
Mhm.
gory, it isn't too terrifying, but like when you write the horror aspects of it, do you ever think, oh maybe I'm going a little bit too far or maybe not far enough? Like how do you balance the horror yourself?
always err on the side of, like, creepier. Obviously, like,
Mm,
you can't have violence or gore in this
mm,
age group, and so it has to be, like, atmosphere and sort of creepy juxtapositions and creepy visuals, you know? No severed heads, you know, that kind of thing is not appropriate for the age group. So, I think that it's good to err on the side of, like, terrifying. I feel like there's been a slight defanging of middle grade horror,
mm,
a little bit. I've definitely read, like, again, like, things like Mary Downing Hahn, like, she wrote super scary books, even Goosebumps, like, the covers, like, those
mm.
sort of schlocky, but, like, genuinely frightening covers that they had
Yeah.
when I was a kid, like, I do feel like that's fun, and I have many editors and people in my life, my agent, I have some kids who read my books early. I have plenty of people who will be like, "Katherine, no, 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 too far. You've gone too far. Take one step back." So I feel like it's good to err on the side of, like, too many steps forward and
Mm.
then tone it down than to be, like, too tame, I guess. So
Yeah, and it's I feel yeah, and as we mentioned earlier as well, I feel like kids and as you said, like, it depends on the child, but some
mhm.
kids can really tolerate it and
Oh, yeah.
prefer
Mhm,
because it's safe scares, isn't it? It's like a
mhm,
safe way to feel frightened and elicit that
totally.
reaction from the reader.
Yeah, everyone survives, you know, it's not like a thing where, like, you're like, "Who's not gonna make it?" Although I
Yeah,
do always tell parents, again, like, our teachers, "If you're not sure, read it yourself and then decide," you know, for your child. You know,
yeah.
it's very hard to say, like, that one book will fit every human that looks at it, so
Fair, fair. So with the newest installment, Dark Waters, what adventure are Ollie and the gang on in this one? Like, what can readers expect from the brand new book?
well, Darkwater, so Vermont's Lake Champlain, has a lake monster. It's sort of Vermont's Loch Ness monster, it's called Champ. And I was like, "I wanna try to do a creature feature," because it's so fun, and I wanted to sort of I have tried to engage a bit with, like, Vermont's, like, landscape and history, in these books, and so, I wanted them to meet the lake monster, and that was kind of like the impetus for the book, and a lot of figuring out lake monster was like, how do you make lake monster scary? Um, be just that, and I came up with a solution, um and I sort of there's so many different ways to have done it. I toyed with having them, be like lost in a rowboat for the whole book, sort of a heart of the sea, like sort of situation. But I was like, it's very static being in a boat. Like psychological thriller is not really not really the place for middle grade. So I need them off the boat, but still be menaced by the monsters. So I came up with like a sort of a giant water snake, which can be on land and in water. So you can have that like, oh, it could be anywhere thing. And the book kind of grew from there. A little bit. It has smugglers instead of pirates because Vermont had smugglers um, in the 1900s, not so much pirates, but sort of same like shipwreck vibes. Treasure Island was a book I reread during the time I was writing, and like Treasure Island, like I feel like no 19th century novel is like totally like unproblematic these days, but like it is so well plotted and so fun.
Yeah,
It is plotted to perfection, it's delightful, it's, like, easy, it's charming, it's like, if I was a kid in, like, 1910, I would have just been obsessed,
yeah,
with this book. It's just a good kids book.
yeah.
Um,
Good adventure.
yeah, it's a good adventure, it really is, no girl in sight, not a woman in that entire book, but it was the time period, so what do you do?
That's what Dark Waters is for. It's gives the kind
Absolutely.
of girl
Yeah.
power. Yeah, face your fears, face the monsters
Mhm.
head on, and see what happens after that. So what kind of confrontations with the Smiling Man? Like, how does he fit into the plot without spoilers?
So, not to be spoilers, he is a background figure in this book, and in part because I want to save him for the grand finale in the next book, in part because I was trying to keep it fresh. But his kind of like background string pulling leads to the predicament the main characters find themselves in, and then he is also instrumental again in the background for getting them out of it, but at a large cost. So and that kind of sets up the next book is how they manage to sort of get out of this book and
And I will say the cliffhanger, it's probably like the biggest, like
my
the
first
end.
cliffhanger. I've never had a
Yeah,
cliffhanger in my life. This is my first one. Sorry.
keeps you reading. It honestly does keep you wanting more, and I'm
Right?
so excited for how many smells. Anyway, sorry. So out of all the books so far, would you say Dark Waters is probably the scariest one? And like, was it the hardest one to write as well, or like, is it easier the more you
Individual.
go on?
Argue Dead Voices might be the scariest.
Mm,
It scared me writing it. There's, sort of a thing with mirrors where you, like, see a figure in a mirror, but it's not there in real life, but it's holding your hand. Actually, there's a scene with, like, what's holding my hands, in, Dead Voices, which is a call out to The Haunting of Hill House, the novel, which has a scene where the lead, Eleanor, is, asleep and someone's, like, soothingly holding her hand, but no one's there.
oh my gosh. It's these really spooky ideas that you kind of like bring to fruition, and you're just like, yeah,
Mm,
what if that actually happened to you? Like you like what ifs, and
mhm.
that's the kind of way that you play out your imagination. Just kind of like runs wild with that, and like, ooh, what
I
would
love what
happen?
ifs.
Yeah.
I'm working on a project right now, and it's set in a haunted middle school, which I'm really enjoying.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
And that's
so,
like a new kind of like middle grade in the future, or like,
it would be a sort of a standalone, and
oh,
I think it's my scariest. It's a book that scared me a lot writing it, so.
oh my gosh, okay, that's awesome. And do you have like any like favorite standout scenes from Talk? Like, is there a moment like obviously without spoilers, but like, do you like recall anything that you wrote that even you yourself were like, oh my gosh, I've just like as you said with Dead Voices, but like with Dark Waters, was there any time where you're like, oof, I need a moment. I've just scared myself too much there.
The mirrors in Dead Voices scared me, the things with the mirrors.
Mhm,
Actually, in Small Spaces, the central scenes where the bus breaks down, the kids escape the
mm,
bus and go into the woods, there's a moment when the kids are hiding in the woods when they hear the bus alarm go off.
mm.
And that happened when I was a kid myself. Like, if you open the back door of a school bus in the US, the alarm goes off. Like,
Oh
there's a
no.
back door alarm, and I was like, "What if they heard the back door alarm because
Yeah.
someone opened the back door of the bus?" And we're like, "Who opened the back door? Why is the back door open? I can hear that it's open, there's the alarm going, but, like, what's happening?" And then
Yeah.
someone's like, "Oh, no, it's whatever." Someone's joking around, then it's like, "Are they? Who's in the
You can't
bus?"
be 100% sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a scene I was, like, proud of, like, it's very creepy, those sort of middle scenes of Small Spaces, and I think they were well written.
Oh my gosh. I would 100% agree. Yeah, it's like that quite like the suspense that builds up and just yeah. So like almost to end on because you did mention stuff like you're waiting on the future. There will be 4 books in the Small Spaces series.
Mm,
So like with the Small Spaces series in general, how much has it changed from when you first started to your idea of how you wanted it to go? Did it change the process? Like did your process of writing the entire series like, oh, this is the way I kind of wanted it to end, but actually, as
mhm.
I'm writing maybe the second book, oh, it's like some things changed for me now of how I want this to wrap up, or is it more like you just tackle it as you go along?
I think it's developed a bit as I've gone through it. I had different ideas for spring, and having Dark Waters be set in an island kind of, like, set up where I want Empty Smiles to be. I always knew I wanted to end, Empty Smiles I guess I can say this, like, the villain is clowns, and it's set at a summer county fair at a
I
local
just said
county
like
fair.
clowns and scarecrows, and you've just like putting everything in.
That's sounds great, and it's at a summer, like, county fair and carnival,
Yeah.
which Vermont has
Oh.
every year. They have county fairs all over the state, and so it's like a haunted carnival, which I thought was a fun setting,
Mm.
and and have enjoyed writing that. And that was always what I wanted to end on, was summer with the county fair and the clowns, so I think I'm there, and, um, yeah.
Oh god, that honestly, it does
Mhm.
sound incredible, and I cannot wait. Will we be able to like follow you on social media? Will we know when like the next book comes out? Like, what are
Yeah, the
next
cover
steps?
is done, so there should be an announcement fairly soon, I think, and, obviously announcements as we go on. Probably looking at publication this time next year, a little bit earlier, September of next year. And yeah, excited to finish up the series. It's been great, like meeting kids and finding readers, and yeah, I've loved it.
Oh my gosh, and I guess with like COVID and everything, like obviously it's probably like hindered some plans with you being able to travel and go places to meet
Right.
readers and stuff. But
Mhm.
hopefully, with hopefully things settle down and you can go on like this tour for the next
Fingers crossed.
small spaces
Fingers crossed.
book.
Definitely.
Fingers crossed.
I hope very much that more meeting of readers and more school visits can happen. Done a ton of Zoom talks,
Yeah.
but would love to meet readers in real life.
Oh, like, nothing beats it, but yeah, I totally get it, like, we have to kind of make do, like,
Mhm.
with the
Definitely.
materials we've got, I guess. But yeah, that was the interview with Katherine Arden. Thank you again, Katherine, like, thank you so, so much for
Thank you,
coming on.
Gavin.
I
Thank
really
you for
appreciate it. We will have to talk again when Empty
definitely.
Smiles comes out and
Mhm.
just celebrate the entire series in general. We'll have a glass of wine,
Yeah, great.
we'll go out in style.
Really
We will go
really
out in style.
appreciate your time, taking the time for interviews and yeah, thank you for reading as well.
Yeah, and everyone else watching as well, I do have all the links for Dark Waters and the entire Small Spaces series down below, so you can check it out. All of Catherine's social media links, do follow her and see when the next book comes out and all of that. And yeah, we hope that you all have a great night, and we will see you next time. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. Bye, have a good night.